Morning, Bushy. Hope you're doing well. Today, just wanted to go through some of the changes that I made on the map real quick. I'm not doing these in any particular order or organized in any particular way. I'm just going to go kind of from end to end, and as I see things, I'll point them out to you. Maybe give you some tips and tricks, some things that you can probably use in the future. So I'm just going to start here at the hangar end, and first thing, these flags can be hidden. If you don't want the flag itself to be hidden, then you can start typing render here in the options on the right hand side, and you can check the box actor hidden in game. You can do that to the flag so that the capture zone is still there, but the flag won't be visible. Um, I think that looked better in the case of this particular map, so I went ahead and hid the flags. I also deleted the alarm sound effect that was here at the tail of the Millennium Falcon. Personally, I thought that it was a little obnoxious to listen to. If you're attached to it and you want to put it back in, then by all means, that's up to you now. But I I would rather that it was like, say, contextual. Like, I don't know how exactly you would do this, but if that alarm sound only played when you were at the last, like, 5% of a team's tickets or something like that, I think that would be better than having it going the entire match. It just made it unpleasant to play in this particular part of the hangar. That's my opinion, but you do with that what you will. Just wanted to let you know that I did that. Lighting. I mostly achieved this look by changing post-processing, making some tweaks to the post-processing volume, and adding in lights everywhere. So let's talk about post-processing just a little bit first. So post-processing, that's the overall like camera visibility and everything. It's what changes your. It's where you can do things like apply dirt masks and do chromatic aberration. There's all kinds of settings and tweaks you can make in these, and you want to keep it simple and easy because all of that affects processing power to do the constant math to see how your camera renders the world. So you want to keep it as simple as you can. But what I do on pretty much all of my maps is I go to exposure, and I change it from auto exposure histogram to manual. When you change it to manual, you'll come down to camera and check shutter speed, ISO, and aperture, and you can tweak these settings to be what you want them to be. What this is going to do is mean that it's going to have the same brightness settings applied across everything. Whether you're indoors or outdoors, it will have the same brightness settings. I prefer to do it that way because I had trouble with the adjustable ones, the automatic ones, making interiors extremely dark and exteriors extremely bright. That's probably me just not knowing how to quite set it up correctly. But regardless, I set it to manual, back under exposure, and then I'll come down to the camera, ISO, and shutter speed and tweak these values to get the brightness just right. That way you're able to see without having to place down a million lights. And then if we come down to under post-process volume settings, which is kind of way down the list here, you can check this box, infinite extent unbound. That means that those settings are going to apply all over the world, right? Like that's just a global universal setting for this level. And then from there, we can do what I did over here in this tractor beam area. This ventilation shaft, it actually has a little bit different settings, and it will automatically change between them. You can see that it gets just a little bit dimmer when you go into the tractor beam. That's because this has a slightly darker ISO. So the shutter speed and the aperture are the same, but the ISO is at 600 instead of 1000. So it dims just a little bit. I thought that look was a nice effect to make the walls kind of pop a little bit and just kind of sharpen up the relief between the bright areas and the dark areas. Again, something you can tweak or change, and you can add these post-process volumes wherever you want. So if you want the bridge to have a slightly different sort of look and feel to it in terms of post-processing, you can add one there. Same with the clone lab, whatever you want to do. Just letting you know that that is an option to use far as tweaking your post-processing so that it doesn't use quite as many lights and that you can make each area feel distinct if you wanted to. Speaking of lights, if we go to at the top of your window here where you have perspective, lit, and show, it has these options in the top left of the window. Click on lit, go to optimization view modes, and about the middle, and click on the top option, light complexity. And it's going to bring up this coloration graph type deal. So it ranges from blue to white in terms of light complexity. Blue means that it's basically not got any light touching it at all. Green is good, then we're getting into your oranges, your reds. Purple is getting there, but it's white that's really bad. It's okay if you see a few spots where there's some white overlapping, but you want to avoid having quite as much white spots as you can because that's very demanding on your computer. And it's the way that we can change these and tweak these are based on the attenuation radius of each individual light. So, and the radius obviously is just how far a given light reaches. So this light right here that I've clicked on has an attenuation radius of 400 units. Same with this one here next to it. This one here, if I tweak this and put this to 500, you can see there that when it reaches out to a wider radius, it is now causing more purple and white overlaps with the lights next to it. So if I put that back to 400, its outer limits are not quite overlapping with the others as badly. So you can place down a lot of these lights and just tweak the attenuation radius to try to keep them from overlapping too bad, and then change the brightness of each light with the intensity there at the top. So this is set to 10, but to change the brightness without changing the attenuation radius, we can increase the candela value of that light. So that's 50. Here's 100. Here's 1,000. So we have a 1,000 candela light, but it does not cross over into these other areas. So even when I open up light complexity, the light complexity didn't change when I changed the candela value because it only calculates this based on attenuation radius. In other words, you can find the right balance. You just have to find the right balance between attenuation radius and candela value to make your lights, light your level, make it look good without it causing a lot of overly complex math that your computer has to do. So, for example, in your case, you had about of all of the lights that were placed down in various places, they were had attenuation radiuses of 1,000, attenuation radii of 1,000 each. So there was a lot of overlap, and most of the map had those white spots. So yeah, this is what I did to tweak lighting as I came through and changed the attenuation radius and the intensity of all of these lights in combination with the post-processing to brighten the map up a little bit, using less lights and having less crossover. So yeah, it's really just something you have to learn through experience and kind of tweak and balance as you go to make it look how you want it to look. What else? What else? There's a bunch of merged objects in there. I made some props like this using the same method that I showed you in that other video. feel free to use those. What it means is you can copy those over into your next mod. If you make a different map in this sort of theme, you can just copy those objects over into the other mod folder and build with those. By all means, it'll save you a lot of time. Just make sure that you take the textures over from one mod to the next as well if you do that. I did the same with a lot of these consoles. This is just one object that I placed the cubes and cylinders and stuff just like you did. That was a great job, by the way. I thought that was a fantastic touch. But I took those cubes and things that you'd matched up on your console and just merged them together. So I selected the original console first, then you select all of your lit cylinders and cubes and everything, and just merge that into one object. So now this is, whoops, damn navigation. So now this is just one object that has its lights built into it. Just something to keep in mind. You can totally do that, make these kinds of prefab console things, and that'll help you build a little bit quicker as well. What else? The doors. For the doors to work, you actually have to use these navigation proxies here. So these, you'll notice that this green nav mesh does not extend through the door, and that's for two reasons. First of all, this mesh has collision. The door mesh has collision, so it's preventing the mesh from connecting through the door as it is. But even when that door wasn't closed, the door is too narrow to actually generate nav mesh through. So the way that we can get around that, this nav mesh proxy, I'll type it up here. Nav link proxy, this right here. A nav link proxy will tell any AI actor in your level that, hey, you can go from this patch of green nav mesh to this patch of green nav mesh. So I use these on each of the doors to let the AI know that they can pass through these doors. I did the same thing over next to your clone lab, where we have this set of stairs that goes from the bridge down into the clone lab. I placed a nav link proxy down that connects from, it's still working. It has what would you call it? It has like a give to it, if that makes any sense. It does not have to be placed exactly. That's why this is still able to work. There's a certain radius around the point that it will still work. All the same, I'm going to move this so that this is actually touching the nav mesh. Maybe pull it out here just a little bit. But that's what allows the AI to know that they can go through the bridge here. They can go up this set of stairs and up through the bridge. And I removed the collision on these objects in here because that was actually affecting the nav mesh as well. To change the collision on an individual object in the world, just click on it, and here in the details panel you can start to type collision, and it will bring up your collision options. And under collision presets you can select what it is. Default just uses, like, it will interact with bullet impacts, it will work with navigation and all that stuff. I just set it to no collision. So players don't interact with it. I don't think, actually that's a good point. I wonder if projectiles will interact with this. So in order to make it so that it only blocks projectiles but nothing else, we can set this to custom. And here where it says projectile, we can basically uncheck all of this. So I'm going to put check ignore there at the top. So it's going to ignore absolutely everything, but I'm going to recheck projectile. So now what this should do is it won't affect navigation. It won't affect players will be able to pass through it. But the projectiles will still strike this object and stop. And you'll get the corresponding particle effect. I'm going to do the same on this little, well, you'll actually have to do this on your end anyway. because I can't make changes to it now. But regardless, this is how you could fix it: is you could go to custom, hit check the ignore box there at the top, and then just under block put projectile, and then that should make it so that the bullets fired from a gun will still hit it and have the corresponding effect, but players will still be able to pass through it. But that, yeah, anyway, this is how you can fix that. So I'll just do it just to do it. Very cool. So that's Navlink proxies. We talked about that. The staircase here. Oh, that's interesting, actually. I didn't realize that the nav mesh is broken here. The bots were still able to find their way through here, probably by running around the far side or something. I don't know. I have never actually witnessed them do it, but that's probably what they do. So maybe what you could do to fix this, place a Navlink proxy right here, and then you just have to very carefully click this little doodad in the middle, drag it into the space here, and drag this end into this space. And there you have it. That means now that when the bots come through the door, they will just instantly cross over into here. They know that they can use that rather than run around by the window. At least that's what I imagine. So that covers that. We've talked about post-processing. Oh yeah. So the Star Destroyers here. I placed in a bunch of these splines. These are travel path splines, and they're included in your blueprints folder. You're very welcome to use them. So the way that these work is you place down the spline somewhere in the world, and then you can drag out. In fact, let's just do it, shall we? I'll show you how this works. So you can take this spline travel path blueprint, and when you place it down somewhere in the world, you have the original point that's like the blueprint piece itself. If we select this right here that's sticking out of it, this is the path that you're creating for your spline. So you can drag that out. Don't drag it out too far. It seems to get a little bit weird if you drag them too far. Instead, hold Alt and click and drag out a new node. And then now we can maneuver this. And I don't know if you've worked with splines before, but you can, whoops, come on now, I'll be very precise. You can maneuver this around, and this will automatically adjust to create a nice curve along your line wherever you move it to. And then you have this like turning bar thing that's on the outside, and you can use these to turn the spline as well, to change its shape. But I'm going to click on this center dot here, hold Alt, drag out another one, and you can see there what it did. When it's really close, it's still going to try and maintain that S shape. And it does that the same thing when you drag them out too far. So just periodically put in a new node so that they don't make these weird S shapes. But you can drag these out, change the shape of your change the shape for an object to follow, is what I'm trying to say here. So let's select an object for it to chase. Let's go to meshes. We'll put down another Star Destroyer. Or actually, let's put down the... okay. Yeah, why not? Why not? We'll make the Falcon fly around real quick. Try and do this quickly here. Move this over here and over yonder. Okay, so now we have a very small path. I'm going to drag out another one just because we need to see this thing do its thing. Okay, So with the spline selected, which I have anywhere along this spline, but as long as you have the spline selected, here on the details panel under default, you will see actor, none. That means nothing is actually following the spline. To choose an actor to follow the spline, pick this eyedropper, and then you're going to use the eyedropper to just pick an object. And it's adjusting it to basically like a 0, 0, 0 point. It's going to look weird that it's floating out here in this strange space, but when you actually start the level, that will disappear, and it will follow the spline path that we chose for it. Underneath that object space over here in the details panel is the timeline length. That is in seconds. So this takes 2 minutes to go from where we started to the end point, whatever is the last point that you drug out. And then it will just run in a loop until the match ends. So if I come here, I can hit simulate. Simulate means that we're starting to run the map without actually playing the map. Because when you hit play, it's going to load in the teams, it's going to load in the spawn screen, and all that fun stuff. And we don't necessarily need to do that. Oh, it's interesting. Why didn't the Falcon part work? But as you can see here, this is what the Star Destroyers are doing. We followed the same process to do the Star Destroyer. I have my starting point, and then I just drug the spline all the way out and around in front of the bridge. Oh, you know what it is? It's because we didn't make the Falcon movable. That's why. But yeah, we drug our spline all the way out in front of the bridge here to try to get like all the way to the extremes. And then it will just restart automatically. So like I wanted it to be, if a player just happened to be standing here when the Star Destroyer reaches the end, they'll watch it teleport back to the beginning. But I guess, you know, the only other option would be to take it all the way out and around past here or something. And I don't know, chances seem kind of low for that, but regardless, this is just how I set up the spline. And you're absolutely welcome to use that spline. I got it from a YouTube tutorial, so I'm not too terribly attached to it. But yeah, this is how you can like move objects in your map along a path to kind of create a cool ambient effect. I've done this with things like helicopters as well. But yeah, you can just stand here in the hangar and just watch these things fly by, which is kind of cool. And then, whoops, yep, it's throwing me errors about the Falcon not being movable. So if I click on the Falcon and make it movable underneath scale under transform, and if we hit simulate again, hey, look at that. Look at that. So this guy is facing the wrong direction. We can fix that by going to, well, what I actually ended up doing, how I fixed it on the Star Destroyer, is I lined up all of the pieces like this, you know. We place down the one, we place down, here's the turrets, here's the top of it. Select each of these pieces, or actually select the base right here, location, we're going to copy that, we're going to paste it into these other ones so that they all have the exact same location. Whoops. And then I merge actors, right? This is how I create an individual static mesh. But if I do that compared to this guy, this is the merged one that is following the process I just did. But that means that this is going to be, this new one would be rotated the wrong way, right? If you look at the preview thumbnail for these objects, this is the correct direction for it to be facing the way you want it to face on your spline travel path. Let's see, if I merge these together just to do it. Whoops. Boom, 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 boom. Let's merge these together. Test art meshes go. I don't care about the name. So here's our new Star Destroyer. If I set that as my, whoops, we put this out, let's delete the old parts. And we can tell this one's different because it's got lights on it. So if I select my travel path spline, let's put this in it instead. And I need to make sure that's movable again. Movable. Okay, here we go, simulate. Yeah, see, we have it faced the wrong way. So the way to fix it, or the way that I fixed it before, is placing down all of those objects like I did here. Just rotate them 90 degrees so that they're facing the correct direction, and then merge them together. Other options include like going into Blender and rotating it 90 degrees and then re-importing it or something like that. Or there are like import options when you bring something into the map that you can change what orientation it's automatically imported to. I think we can look at it even in here. If we go to import, oh, it's not going to give it to me because this is not imported from anything. This was created inside the engine. But I think here under import settings, you can do things like change the what orientation it is imported into. For example, I can show you on one of these characters that I got. Here we go. So this guy actually did not get imported in here like this. Uh-oh, come on. Preview scene. Morph target preview. Where is it? Here we go. So I imported this from my computer into the engine, and I needed to make some changes. He was actually on his side and shrunk down quite a bit. So you can come to import rotation and set, tell it to import on the X and the Z to a certain degree, and then change what scale it's imported at. So I'll show you how this works. I'm going to change his import scale back to 1, and I'll put these back to 0, and you can see what he looked like before. I've made some changes here, and then I'm going to hit re-import base mesh, and that's going to find the file, find the location that I imported it from find that folder, and it's going to re-import it back into the engine. So this is how it looked originally. So I can tell it to fix that by putting 90 here, 90 here. This is, again, you're just going to have to figure out what the rotation should be based on this. I just know that this is what worked for these particular models. And then because he's like scaled down, my import uniform scale is going to be 1.9, and that should both rotate him up and around to face the front of the camera, and will make him as big as the other characters in Harsh Doorstop. But there you have it. So yeah, these are some import settings that you can set here. Then hit re-import base mesh. So anyway, that's another way potentially that you can change the rotation on an object. If you place it on the spline and it looks funky, that's a way you can fix it. What else? Oh yeah, we can change the timeline length on this. Let's just go ahead and change it to like 15 seconds. So that means it's going to take 15 seconds to go from end to end, and then it will just loop and start over. So the faster you want an object to move, the shorter the timeline. The longer you want it to take, the longer the timeline. Pretty straightforward. What else? What else? On your lower level here, if you ever wanted to make place a flag down here and make this capturable, I had some ideas about where you could create some doorways. I was thinking you could take this doorway. This is a single-sided door that's mostly just decorative. This is the one that has the open closed option in it, and I'll go through that here in a second because I think that's pretty cool. We involve enums, which if you haven't used an enumerator before, they're pretty powerful as far as like changing things on the fly like this. Regardless, I was thinking you could take this door, you could make this an open door, and then build your ramps like you've done elsewhere in the level. Build a ramp that goes from that door down under the conference room and into this side of the warehouse. Yeah, I'd probably get rid of this shelf and these crates here, but you could drop your, or even have it come down into the side of the pipe room here, whatever you want to do, whatever you think the layout works best. But you could, or you could even go further. Like you could totally build out this area underneath the hangar. You could build this area out. In fact, you'd probably want to, because on the other side, I was thinking you could take out this. These extra walls in here, by the way, are to block the light from coming through. Because if I hide this, you see how you get this weird purple glow? That's the light coming through and not quite being stopped by the meshes, which I find obnoxious. So if I place these down to stop the light coming through around those edges. So that's why there are these big ceiling blocks and big wall blocks that are outside of your map. It's to stop the light coming through. Anyway, if you got rid of this block here and then you maybe use this doorway or somewhere along here, you could use this door and create another ramp that comes down on this side. So you have a ramp that comes down on the far side by the conference room somewhere, a ramp that comes down from right here on this side of the detention block. Then you could build a whole bunch more corridors under here that would come in like to here and here, and then try and place a big flag down right here in the middle, maybe underneath the elevator. You could hide the flag mesh and just make the capture zone really big to go from end to end of this warehouse, like from this wall to this wall. I already added some navlink proxies through this area in case you end up doing that. These go back through this lower corridor here and will go through your trash compactor. I can't guarantee you that the AI will come through this way, but I placed down the navlink proxies anyway, just in case you end up going that way. So there's some navlink proxies that go through the trash compactor and through these green doors here, these door blueprints. And then here's your elevators that you can still use to get up and down. I don't know how to make the AI use your elevators. I think they're cool. But I don't know how to make the AI use them because they move. Anyway, regardless, that's basically kind of set up for you on that side. But you could make a whole nother corridor section out here beneath the hangar, add a ramp by the conference room, a ramp out of the detention block. You fight through these corridors under here, and basically you want it to be equidistant so that both teams will reach the lower warehouse flag at the same time that's inside this lower warehouse. But anyway, that's for you to decide if you want to build that or how you want to build that. But yeah, that ball is in your court. I decided to put that in there for you so it's ready to go. Okay. I guess something else to know about merging is that once this is a solid object, I merge all of these light panels together, by the way, on the detention block. And that could end up being a problem for you, I suppose, if you wanted to make changes to how this detention block is shaped. Because once objects are merged together, they're now one object, and you can't really like shrink it. You can add objects by, say, if we wanted to add this light panel thing with, say, these walls, you could totally do that, and you can add objects to even a merged object by merging all of these together. What you can't do is shrink it back down. Once something is added to a merged object, it can't really be removed. You basically have to have the original components again, rebuild it, but missing whatever pieces you wanted to remove. So I guess that's just something else to notice about merged objects. And whoops, I made a group. I didn't want to make a group. Oh, also, all of these big light panels that I'm using to block the light, these big roof pieces, the way that I got the mini map to look like this, is I hid all of those roof pieces, including the ones that are over the hangar, and then placed a really big Star Destroyer. Like, take this up to, say, 100 this way, 100 this way. Maybe that's a little too big. Let's go, what, 50? Yeah, something sort of like that. I took it like this and kind of line it up like yay, so that your hangar is aligned with the back of the Star Destroyer. And then took I also adjusted your mini-map actors so that they were set up along better looking boundaries. So we do that. I placed the Star Destroyer underneath, and then we can take all of these roof panels here. Actually, the easiest way is to go to the folder in here called Exterior. Where is it? They are alphabetized, which is nice. So yeah, here under Exterior, you can just hit this eyeball, and it hides it all. I mean, we don't want to hide everything. We can probably find our Star Destroyers. Where's our original Star Destroyers? So yeah, this one here. But now all of the light panels are exposed. Well, I guess you'd have to go through and click all of these like this. H to hide. But now that these are hidden, it means that when you generate minimap, they're not going to be visible. So this is how I generated a new minimap where you can actually see into the map, is by hiding all of these individual panels that are blocking visibility into the hallway. If you end up building another add-on beneath the hangar, it shouldn't be a big deal. Like, you shouldn't need to generate a new minimap for that because it's underneath, so it's not going to see it, right? You could still use the same minimap, but all the same, I'm trying to just let you know that this is a process you could use to make your minimaps look good and work for you. Is that I moved some stuff around and hid some things to make sure that you could see into the Star Destroyer, and then just so that you don't have random blocks floating in space, I placed this big old Star Destroyer beneath it so that it looks like it's actually being played inside of a Star Destroyer, and you're just seeing a cross section of it. That's why we can see parts of the detention block and the hangar and the conference room and all that fun stuff. Anyway, just want to let you know that that is how I did that. So let's go ahead and delete that. I'm going to delete the spline. Can unhide everything. That's Control H, by the way. Control H just unhides everything that you've hidden. Oh no, did I think it deleted my Star Destroyer. Oh well. Nuts. What was it at? I think that's right. About like yay. Yeah, it's about right. That's about right. And then we are not actually using you. Whoops. Anyway, I'll fix all that stuff later. Actually, if we delete you, unhid. Okay, cool. So yeah. Oh, I did also want to suggest that these original spawns that you have placed down in the detention block, through just playtesting with the bots, I found that if you come to this hallway right here and post up behind this barrel, you're literally shooting players as they spawn. So you might want to move this back inside the detention block somewhere, maybe inside your torture chamber. Here, you could place the flag down in the middle and then adjust the spawn points to kind of be around the room. But that way, players are not spawning right here where they can be shot easily from the hallway. Just trying to think about like fairness, I guess you could say. Technically, you can do the same thing here from the conference room. If you come into like one of the carbonite chambers, if you come like right here, you can fire through these doorways into the thing, into their spawn point. So just something to think about, that maybe you would want to adjust the original spawn points, maybe find a more fair place to put them. But it's also such a super CQB map that's going to be a challenge regardless. Anyway, just wanted to make you aware of those thoughts. What else do I want to cover? These new light fixtures. That's a blueprint that's in there. Feel free to use that as well. The mesh is included in there if you want to use it. Blueprints. Let's talk about these blueprint doors. If I open this up here, I've clicked on the object in the world. I can just click on this, edit blueprint, and it'll open the blueprint editor for that particular object. So this is the event graph, and I'm using the event graph to tell this door which color I want these light panels to be. So these light panels on the side are white, but inside these carbonite tubes, they're white inside of here too, but I don't want them to be because I feel like that stands out. I want them to be red. So I made an enumerator that can make them red lights instead of red lights, which I've selected here off of this drop down, and that makes them red, and they won't show right now. You have to hit simulate, and then it will change them to red at runtime, and that's for one major reason. It's because of the differences between the event graph and the construction script. The construction script inside of a blueprint happens before runtime. The event graph is what happens at and throughout runtime. So you can use the construction script to tell that's what's actually telling the door whether it is open or closed. I'll go over enumerators real quick if you've never seen an enumerator before. An enumerator is basically just a list. It is, like in this case, this is the door light color enumerator. Again, like using your proper naming convention that's consistent. E is for an enumerator, Star Wars Destroyer SWD, and then a name, door light color. So if I wanted to say make these green, I can just hit new there on the side and add another option for green. And why would I do that? What do I need that for? Well, now I've used this enumerator inside here. If we go to the event graph, now I have this additional option. See, the reason I like enumerators so much is you can save an enumerator as a variable in a blueprint like this, which you can do by clicking variable, and then it's going to be a Boolean by default. But if we type in my enum number, my enum name, so ESWD, it's going to have door state or door light color now, and I can just save that as a variable type. So, and I guess it's already saved there, so I'll just delete that here in a second. But what you can do with this, you drag this into the event graph, get the state, drag off of this pin, and if you type in SW, it's going to bring up switch. And a switch means that when an event fires off to make this happen, in this case, like we have event begin play. So just as soon as the map starts up, it's going to follow the line of logic that's based on whatever choice you give it in the world, if that makes sense. So this, and that happens by making this a publicly edited thing right here. You see these eyeballs? Means that you, whenever you place it down in the level, it's going to open up this drop-down menu to make a selection. That is how we're doing that. Is we're making that a publicly edited thing per instance. The same thing happens when you check this box right here, instance editable. Means that every time I place down this door, for that particular instance of the door, I can make a selection about the door color, the light, what color the side lights are, and whether that door is open or closed. And the open or closed thing is based in the construction script. So again, I hope I'm not confusing you, but just to make sure that I'm covering this thoroughly, on event begin play, so as soon as it starts, based on the selection that I've made for the enum light color, it's going to only make one selection off of the pin here. So you can make these things do whatever you want. It's just going to follow the logic based on whatever pin is connected here. So for example, if I do white, the default material for the door color is already white, so I don't need to do anything. The default value of the enumerator is to go to white, and white, since it has no logic off of this pin, means that it's not gonna actually do anything. So therefore, it's gonna use the default white color for that particular door. But if I want it to be red, which in this case indicates that the door is locked, or wait, is it using it for locked? Oh no. White means that the side lights on this door are going to be white by default. I didn't change anything, it's just going to be white. But if I wanted to make those red, then I select red out here on the instance of this particular door, and then it's going to follow the logic, come into the switch, hey, this is red, so let's run the code that's on the back end of the red choice. And in this case, I'm telling it to set the material as this red, as the red emissive material that is actually being used. It's the same one that's being used in the tunnel here. So this behind the light panel, it will have the same emissive color as what is in the tunnel. This SWD red emissive color is what is actually being told, because I'm telling it, hey, set the material for this mesh in this element index, which the element index is element 0. They always start at 0. So 0 is the door, 1 is the emissive stuff that's behind the light panel, and 2 is the doorway, the doorway itself. So yeah, that's how that works. And then what I'm telling it to do is, behind the light panels on either side of it, set the material as the red emissive, not the default white emissive. And we could definitely do the same. If I drag off of this pin here, let's go set material for what is it called? It's the merged door and small lights here. That's one way that you can do that. Another way to do that is if we drag directly off of, we can drag this into the event graph and then drag off of this and tell it to do something. So set material. Sorry, that's probably really hard to see. But we can set material like this, or to simplify our graph a little bit, I can just drag this right down into here, and it's using the same reference to the doorway mesh to tell it, hey, this is what I want you to do. And then let's apply it to this. And then we're going to change our element index to be 1 so that it's using the emissive behind the thing. And off of green, I want it to run this code right here. And let's find SWD. Show me green. Let's make this work. Green. You can also save these as variables, but now we're getting a little too deep into blueprints, and I don't want to get too much further distracted. But regardless, with this selected now, I select the enum here for green. Like I say, it didn't change anything because it only changes at runtime, but if we hit simulate, look at that. Now we have green lights on either side of the door. And you can make this do just about whatever you want. This is the power of enums, is that you can make it run something behind that code based on your choices when you place that object down in the world. So anyway, but event graph can only happen at runtime. It's the construction script that lets you make those choices before runtime. So what I'm doing here in this construction script, for example, I have an enumerator that is for whether the door is open or closed. And I'm telling it to do a couple of things based on the choice that I'm making there. So if the door is open, I'm telling it to take the doorway. This doorway is movable, and I'm telling it to take that door, set, well, it's actually setting its visibility, which it doesn't really need to. Shouldn't need to do that actually, because we're actually moving the door. We're not setting the visibility of the door. That's actually a leftover bit of code from a different method I was trying. But now, if we take this, just recompile, we can hit closed and open. Does that still work? Yeah, can you see, you can probably see the outline, these dashed outlines through the thing here, that the door is actually just being moved above the doorway. Or if the door is closed, then it's being dropped inside of here. And the other thing that this construction script is telling it to do is change the lights around the door frame based on whether it is open or closed. So if the door is open and a player is able to travel through it, I want it to be communicated using green lights, or closed, the door is locked, now it has red. And I've done that by setting the material off of the back end of this code. Let's go ahead and delete that as well. So the way that I'm moving the door up and down is we're setting the relative location of the door. This is its original state, and you can just copy the original location from here and put those coordinates. Well, actually, I guess you don't need to do that. You don't need to copy the old location, you need to copy the new location. So what I did was I took this doorway here and I moved it up out of the way from where it was going to be, about, like, it needs to be a little higher, right about there. And then I copied this information here, specifically the Z, since that's what determined elevation. I put that Z in this spot right here, new location. So again, when the door is selected to be open, it is setting the relative location of specifically the door to be in this location, and then setting the material of the door frame that's merged with the light panels on the side, it's telling this bit here, it's setting the material for that to be this red version that I have. If we go to my material library here, all the materials we're using, I have the original white, I have a blue version, mostly used for blue lights down in the pipe room since it's the same material. I have green for when the door is open, red for when the door is closed, and I made some yellow lights as well. Material instances are basically free, so you can make as many of them as you want without adding too much to what your computer is doing. But yeah, I made a different colored version of these door frame pieces, this door material, and then I'm setting the material inside of the construction script. That's what is telling it to, hey, use the red lights or the green lights around the door frame, if depending on whether it is open or closed. So anyway, that is how that works. Well, I gotta fix my door frame location now. Do that really fast. Boop-a-doo-doo. Put you down right about there's probably where it was originally. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So anyway, that is how that works. Is I've got a couple of enums in there that are used to set the light color on the side and whether that door is open or closed, and it is setting the material. And that shows you the difference between the event graph and the construction script. Construction script happens before runtime, and event graph is stuff that is happening at runtime. And that's how all of these things can work together to create this. So in this case, if you wanted to add a ramp over here, this is the single-sided one. So you could just replace this with one of these double-sided doorways. That's another blueprint here that's using the same basic framework. Use this doorway plus lights, and not the single version. You could just place that down right there and then build a ramp that goes down, out, and comes to whatever corridors you add underneath the hangar there. And if you have questions about enums, about blueprints and how they work or whatever, I can share what I've learned with you myself. There's also some great resources on YouTube that are tutorials about those things specifically. So, anywho, that's that. And again, I hope I'm not overwhelming you with information here. Reach out to me about anything in particular if you have any questions. I think that just about does it for everything I wanted to cover, and I've gone on for quite a bit. I've been rambling quite a bit now. But anyway, I just want to say great work on the map. I think what you've got here was really creative. I haven't seen some of these assets used in the way that you used them. And I applaud your creativity. I think that the map is really fun and it looks really good. And I'm happy and proud that I got to help you make it that much better. So regardless, you have a good one. Be safe out there. And if you have any questions or any concerns or you need help with any future projects, reach out anytime. Okay. Have a good one.